do we say? 86 million miles away, the sun will burn our eyeballs out. And God is infinitely holier than that. What did we say when we were? I don't know if you remember on that associational gathering night. Those are words, but God's words. We looked at the passage concerning marriage. I don't know if you remember that. If you weren't here on the associational gathering night, this was probably 8 months ago, 9 months ago, maybe a year ago. And we looked at the passage in Matthew where Jesus said that divorce is permissible. Jesus said, in the case of adultery, divorce is permissible because of the hardness of man's heart. And from that verse, we concluded that God allows particular things for us, like He does, of such things, because when people cheat in relationships, our hearts turn like stone sometimes, and we find ourselves incapable of being able to forgive people. And so the Lord, what do we say on that? He even lowers His standards of what He asks of us. Like, I'll tell you how it worked on that night, because I brought part of those notes. We said that even what God asks of us, that when He asks us, many times He's giving concession to our own human weakness. These words have been on my mind. Listen to this. Origen of Alexandria, writing about 250 A.D., he says this, that sometimes what God asks, some laws that God gives, a human weakness, but lowers the capable of meeting His high standards. In the word Moses, because of the hard book, that which is preeminent. And so the hard beginning, he says, it has not been so. If you have given at least some of the laws, that laws on account 16, 17, 18-year-olds, they're not capable of making good decisions. We said that many times. Our scientists, Darren and Matt, they'll agree, I believe. You can ask them afterwards. As a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear Him. He knows how we are formed. He remembers that we are. I realize we're almost out of time, but you're going to be here for like 10 more minutes. So take your shoes off and listen. On that evening in question, when we looked at the passage where God seemingly lowers the bar, we went through this list where God shows mercy and grace to His people. It's what He does. We discussed Lot's desire to flee. Lot fled. Although on irrelevant excuses was accepted by the angel. It was not God's original plan. God told Israel to totally destroy the spoil from the cities they attacked. If you remember this. And they told them the next city they could keep the spoil. Because He knew they weren't capable of not keeping the spoils. He shows mercy. He shows grace. It was evidently God's plan that Moses should be His spokesman. Do you remember that? Moses refuses. God, no. Moses refuses. You know what God does? If I was God, I would strike him dead right where he stands. But no, God, being full of mercy and compassionate, being full of it, but He seemingly concedes to Moses' stubbornness, and He makes Aaron the spokesman. Moses literally said, since I speak with faltering lips, why would Pharaoh listen to me? God seemingly gives concession to His human weakness, making Aaron the spokesman in Exodus 7:1. It's marvelous grace. 12:10, Israel would not have a human king. Mercy. So when they got, He gave command. This is very opening pages. It's full of mercy. You remember this story of the prodigal son, this story, and he squandered it. And his reasoning for coming home was purely selfish in motive. He did not want to be with his father. He squandered his inheritance. He squandered his father's riches. He was sick of eating pig food. And he said, you know what, it'd be better for me back there. There I had better food. So he even greets his father. And before his father even hears his well-written speech of I'm sorry, what does his father do? You remember? Runs to him. He runs to him. He embraces him. And calf, he puts a ring on his finger and a coat on his back. What does that say about God? A God of mercy. 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 It is fair. Matthew 18, unforgiving servant. the but the Lord tells us, servant who the cost is 160,000, 1 million, makes us a forgiving people. You can't look at the sun. It's 92 million miles away. 92 million miles away. What makes us think we can stand before our God for a moment? For a moment. He's merciful. He's merciful. He's a mercy that forgives all injuries. That is all injuries. All injuries. Is beyond our human capacity. And it is nothing but the fruit of God's merciful love dwelling in our hearts. It's the only Jesus and be merciful unless you are a recipient of His mercy. The fruit of God's merciful love dwelling in our hearts. Verse 25 of Matthew 23. Verse 27. We clean the outside of the cup with this desire that our hearts, the inside of the cup, becomes clean, full of dead man's bones. We are, I give you 100 reasons to be merciful. I won't. We don't know what people are going through. We don't. We don't know where they've come from. We don't know their stories. We don't know their struggles. We don't know their circumstances. Patience for being merciful has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with God's mercy that we've received. His forgiveness that we've received. It's not just because mercy heals. It does. It does heal, I promise you. It's not just because it's what. I'll give you a quick story. I'll give you this in closing. There's a lady that came to my apartment complex here a couple of weeks ago. I might have told one or two of you. And she's from the battered women's shelter. Read her. No good credit, no bad credit. Does not yet. And she was, which I haven't told my mercy, from this great tent. I called her a couple of weeks. My first thought was, I'm calling her because she didn't have. And I said, hey. Anyways, I took her over. It's like, there's a coffee. Great. I'm not telling you the apartment complex. It's not my money. It's not. I want you to think highly. That's our work. We don't meet His standards. Powers us with one blessing of it. We are broken and poor. Weightier provisions of the law, Lord, I pray right now that you are building, but your present self